What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Seth Rosczewski, and here with me today is my co-host, Rich. Rich, it's good to see you. We're back.
Good morning. Good morning, Seth.
Yep.
Good morning, Caroline. And
Good morning.
Here we are.
Here we are talking about DB Cooper yet again.
Part two.
Part two. This one is live. So for all the live viewers out there, make sure that you throw in your comments and questions in the comments below. I do have a line to them. I can see them. So make sure that you're putting them in there, because at the end of the episode, we have a zoom in with one of the most notorious DB Cooper experts there is. Notorious. He's very notorious. And you know what? I'm actually going to give it out right now. We are going to be zooming in with Eric Eulis, someone who's well known in this community. Sure is very well known. He has a history documentary on the History Channel, and he has a show on Netflix. He has done a lot with this case, and I'm very excited to be able to sit down and talk to him today.
So this should be a fun show, a continuation of what we did last week when we also had a guest from afar.
Absolutely. We had Darren Schaefer last week. Darren, if you're watching, thank you so much for coming on the show. It really means a lot to me. Thank you to all of our guests. It really means a lot to us. It just makes the show that much better, and especially where it's live. You guys, throw your comments down below, and I will ask Eric your comments. So it's a direct line from the audience to an expert. So today, we're taking a mathematical standpoint and a mathematical view of the DB Cooper case.
Well, that's what I do.
Absolutely. As a math professor, it's all you.
That's what I look at things from a mathematical standpoint. Let me take off my glasses so I can see.
Right. There you go.
I'm ready.
Actually, yeah.
I'm actually ready to jump out of an airplane. I'm a little bit overdressed today. It's a little bit warm.
It is a bit warm.
Warmer than I expected, but I have to look neat. I got to put on my DB Cooper tie and my DB Cooper glasses. And so let's get into what we're going to talk about today. First, let's bring everybody up to date.
Sure.
Okay, about the flight situation.
Alrighty.
A gentleman gets on a flight at Portland International Airport.
Under the alias?
Of Dan Cooper.
Dan Cooper.
And he buys a ticket to Portland. 30 minutes, flight time.
Yep.
$20.
Absolutely.
Give him the paper ticket, gets on the plane, orders a drink. What does he drink?
Drinks a 7-Up.
7-Up on the rocks.
7-Up. And I think
with bourbon.
I think in order, actually, you've already cracked it. So I'm going to crack a 7-Up in honor
of Dan
Cooper. Possibly the late Dan Cooper, of which no one knows about.
No.
Mysterious.
So he's got his drink, 7-Up and bourbon on the rocks, and the plane takes off, and he hands a note to the stewardess.
Yeah.
She puts the note in her pocket. He says, "You better look at that. I have a bomb."
Right.
There's a note and said, indeed, she had a bomb. He showed her slightly opening his briefcase, something in there with wires and red sticks. He presents his demands. He wants 4 parachutes.
Sure.
He wants $200,000 in low
Not this one. That one.
currency, $20 bills. And that's what he wants. So the plane goes to Seattle, land. They get the money and the parachutes, and he lets all of the passengers,
including some of the flight crew. I think there were 36
passengers, and
including
2 of the flight crew stewardesses. One that was in the front part of the plane that didn't have much interaction with him, and the lady in the back, I believe her name was Florence Schaefer.
Sure.
She's the one that saw the note, and then Tina Mucklow was requested by DB Cooper to stay on the aircraft.
Absolutely.
And so the plane is on the ground for a little while. He wants to go to Mexico, and he's going to lower the stairs at the rear. And so immediately the flight crew is coming to the conclusion he's probably going to use these parachutes to walk down the stairs and into the night.
And something that I learned about those particular shoots were he asked for 2 front and 2 rear.
Right.
Now, to me, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's just the way it mounts. So 4 total shoots, but it was actually 4 halves. So 2 full shoots because they clip together. I didn't know that, and that was something that I learned in my research this week.
Yes. Well, what happens is the harness on the back of a military chute and a sports chute has a series of straps, 2 over the shoulder, 2 around here, and the 2 what we call the butt straps.
Sure.
That go around your rear and up between you onto the harness, and the parachute is attached to the back of that harness that you're wearing.
Right.
That's the main chute. In this case, 28 foot.
Right.
28 gores, those are the panels that are in the plane. Non-steerable, that's the one that he chose.
Right.
And he eventually put that chute on. The other 2 chutes, which are smaller chutes, go on the front of the belly, reserve chutes. This is in case the main chute does not deploy, you deploy the
front
reserve chute.
Right.
So one of these reserve chutes was a dummy chute.
Right.
Was sewn, and because that's all they could grab. And the other one, he took apart and took the cord.
He took about 100 feet of that cable to fasten the I guess the open sack of money, like a really cheap, like if you're gonna imagine like a cartoon bank sack, that's what it is.
Right.
And he used that to fasten it shut. And in my research for this episode, Eric Ulis believes that he used that to, and he took some of the money and put it in the reserve chute and fastened that shut as well. But he'll get to that, which is a really interesting theory.
Right. So the airplane takes off. He orders them not to go over 200 knots and not to exceed 10,000 feet. Keep the landing gear down. He wanted a flap setting of
15 degrees.
So that leads us to believe that he knew the operation of an airplane.
Right.
He knew that he needed, if he was going to jump off the last step into the night beyond, because it was dark by that time, day before Thanksgiving, 1991. And
71.
71. Oh, I guess it's... time goes fast when you're having fun like me. See, but this is what happens when you get old. 20 years,
absolutely,
just gone like
just
that.
like that. Yep.
Okay, so 1971, and it's dark. It's raining,
and the way in the altitude of which they're flying. Excuse me, they're flying.
Right.
They're not. So he's getting a type view because he's literally in a rain cloud. Of forest underneath him, and he's just waiting until he can see civilization to eventually depart.
So immediately as they're getting ready to leave, the tower at Seattle SeaTac Airport notifies the authorities, the FBI. They were involved with the getting of the money. They notify the Air Force, and the Air Force decides they're going to scramble some aircraft to follow the 727.
Sure.
And see if they can get approximate time of if he's going to jump out, where it is.
Right.
This reports that they were F-16s. They were not F-16s. The F-16s weren't operational at that time. They were in development, but they weren't operational. So the 2 types of aircraft that were involved were an F-106.
Okay.
And called, I think, a Delta Dagger, and an F-102, which used to be here at Otis Air Force Base in Massachusetts, with F-102s.
Delta Dart.
Delta Darts.
There we go. Yep.
Okay, so you got Delta Daggers, Delta Ducks. The F-106s came out of the Air Force Base, McCord Air Force Base, which is near Seattle. And the F-102s came out of Portland Airport, because it was an Air National Guard. So they scrambled these planes, and there's also an additional plane, a T-33 training aircraft, which happened to be in the air out of McCord, and they tried to follow the 727
Sure.
behind it and above it because they didn't want to be visible. And they rotated in back of it so they couldn't be seen by the 727 or anybody on the 727 because they didn't want to.
Now they were about 6 miles back,
Right.
is what I saw. So they were about 6 miles back, and they were doing like S patterns because so these particular aircrafts couldn't travel at the speed, at that elevation, and at that speed that the F-27 Cooper's plane was traveling at. They needed to go faster. It's just the way the planes were engineered. So to do that, they were creating more distance by creating an S pattern so that they could maintain speed and follow / tail the F-27 plane that Cooper has hijacked.
So at approximately, the aircraft took off at 7:40, and approximately at 8:15, 8:13, the crew in the aircraft, by that time, D.B. Cooper, Dan Cooper, had told Tina Mucklow, the stewardess that was in the back of the aircraft, to go to the front of the aircraft. She was scared when the air stairs came down that she would be sucked out the back.
Sure.
Without a parachute.
Right.
And he finally said, well, go up front, go in the cockpit, and stay there.
Right.
So he was the only one in the back of the aircraft at the time that he jumped out. The crew estimated at the time was 8:13 because they felt a lurch as somebody must have gone off the back steps.
So when he left the steps, he kind of he leaped off of those air stairs, and that created the air stairs to kind of like dip down and then shoot up just off propulsion. And they either hit and shut or hit, shut, and open back up again. So the crew felt that pressure inside the plane itself. So that's what they're reporting on at that 8:15,
Right.
area.
So this is where we are, and that's both the end of the story and the beginning.
Absolutely, because there are so many.
Because the story ends there as far as D.B. Cooper. The only hint that we've got in the last 50-some-odd years is almost $5,000 that was found at
Tina Bar
on the Columbia River.
T-E-N-A, not T-I-N-A. Because a lot of people think that it's kind of like a nod to Tina Mucklow, the flight stewardess who sat with Cooper for hours, lighting his cigarettes, talking with him and discussing and keeping him calm. And she did, as a 22-year-old, an excellent job. She should be in all the handbooks. So he thinks, so some people believe that the money at Tina Bar is kind of like a nod to Tina, where I think it just kind of happened to be there.
Coincidental.
No, because it's the middle of the night. How are you going to be able to locate? It's
So there's where we are, and this is where we're going to pick up the story today.
Alrighty.
As far as how is.
Sure.
And Tina Mucklow had conversations with D.B. Cooper for the better part of 2 hours. And she commented, interesting comments, that he looked out the window of the airplane and could identify Tacoma, the city of Tacoma.
Yeah.
And he also identified or mentioned the proximity, which I think is about 15 miles between McCord Air Force Base and SeaTac International Airport, which is where the 727,
Sure.
the Northwest Orient flight.
Yeah, so he was picking out locations as he's looking out the window.
And that's a clue.
Absolutely, it's a clue.
So it tells you.
Everything's a clue.
He tells you that
he's familiar with the location.
From there, he worked there, or he was stationed there.
Sure.
So he's either maybe former military at McCord. He could have been from the Seattle-Tacoma area.
He could have been working with a airline
or working for an aircraft
Yeah.
manufacturer like Boeing, which is in that area.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that is kind of a clue that he knew where he was, and he just didn't happen to pick that flight
Sure.
out of the blue and say, well, this is where I'm going to do. I'm going to pick a shot flight. Been places he could have, which would have been much more suitable for landing.
Absolutely.
Desert.
Right. Right.
Put together, and you're going to be able to put those on
The screen.
on the show
At a later date. So for the viewers that are watching right now, thank you for watching it live. I appreciate it. Subscribers always get it first. But for anybody who's watching it later, tomorrow, which is going to be Sunday, so if you're watching it on Sunday or beyond, you'll be able to see these images. So make sure you come back and check it out if you want to check out these images.
Okay, so what do we have on the plane after DB jumps?
So we have the reserve chute,
Yep.
the cable, the paracord that he cut out.
Yep.
And we also have one of the most profounding pieces of evidence, the tie and the tie clip itself. And some 7-Up. I got to take a sip. I don't drink soda all that much, but you know what? For this occasion, I've
And
had it.
additionally, in addition to those items, the tie, the glasses that his drinks, 7-Up and bourbon, was served in,
Sure.
we have 8 cigarette butts.
Absolutely.
Not just any cigarette butts.
Raleigh.
Raleigh. Now, that's a clue.
Absolutely, it's a clue.
Unfortunately, it's a clue that got misplaced
Yeah.
or lost. However, they do have the brand, and the fact that the brand is that time, 1971, just to give you a quick update, 1971, the beginning of the year, January 2nd, was the day that there were no more commercial cigarettes on TV because of health concerns.
Sure.
They banned television. Before that, there were a lot of commercials, interesting commercials for cigarettes on television. The target at that time in 1971 was a Winston,
Okay.
and followed closely by Marlboro.
Okay.
Two, D.B. Cooper smoked Raleigh, and Raleigh is not even in the top 10.
So what is Raleigh's customer base? Who smokes Raleigh? Like, okay, businessmen drive Porsche, millionaires drive Lamborghinis. Businessmen drive Audis.
You and I don't.
No, not me. No. I drive a Nissan Frontier.
And you also drive
Old Corvette.
no,
Old Corvette.
well, a Harley.
I do ride motorcycles.
Yes, you do.
I do like my motorcycles.
And I watch people ride motorcycles.
They're so much fun.
So the cigarettes are a major clue. And why did people smoke Raleigh? Well, there were the big 4 cigarette manufacturers, some American, and I've listed them here. And Raleigh is in the second tier. And they're not one of the more Brown and Williamson, who makes Raleigh. Their biggest seller was Cool.
Okay.
Cool was the first methylated cigarette that came out, and in at that time, Cool was the number 4 cigarette in the United States.
Sure.
Menthol. First menthol came out in the 1930s. Raleigh isn't even on the top 15 list as being. So why would anybody smoke Raleigh? Well, Raleigh was was the first cigarette which offered coupons in the packs.
Absolutely.
So if you smoked Raleigh, you primarily saved coupons because they had value. Similar to green stamps, which you used to get at supermarkets, you'd put them in a booklet, and then you would send them premium. And the only cigarette company that did it was Brown and Williamson, and they did it with 2 cigarettes. With their menthol cigarette. In 1970s, those it later on. But, and they were the only two that had these little, them up and turn them in for premium. So what do we got? We have a individual probably has association. He smokes cigarettes. He probably, if he's smoking 8 on a flight that lasted from 3 o'clock until he went out the back, he's probably saving those coupons.
Right.
So now we've narrowed it down to male, Caucasian, roughly 5'10", in his 40s, smokes Raleigh cigarettes, probably from that area of the Northwest. If he smokes Raleighs, let's make the next conclusion that he probably saved the coupons if he smoked them like he was smoking them that night. I tried to find out whether the FBI investigated that clue of who in the Pacific Northwest turned into Brown and Williamson for premiums using Raleigh cigarettes.
Sure.
And I could not find a definite answer that yes, they did.
Maybe we can ask Eric that question.
Yes,
that's a great question
to ask him.
He's probably never been asked that question before.
Maybe not. But only a mathematician would come up with that.
Absolutely.
So here's what I did. Now I wanted to identify. How do we identify D.B. Cooper? Well, you got him right there.
We got him right here.
That's just what he looks like, right?
Absolutely. Oops. If we go to my camera, we can check it out. Right there.
That's the wanted poster for D.B. Cooper, done by an FBI sketch artist, which started within a day and a half after the hijacking and was updated several times after that. So here's what I did. I took that picture and I took some of our candidates that have been identified as being D.B. Cooper.
Sure.
Either identified by themselves, identified by relatives, identified by podcasters and by broadcasters and by
investigators, anybody, yeah.
Private investigators. So, and here's the list that I got. And you're going to see this picture when you put a few of the D.B. Cooper suspects. Robert McCoy, we talked about him last week.
Sure.
Ted Braden, who was mentioned by Darren last week, is one of his possible candidates. Bob Rackstraw. So that's it. Say that 3 times twice.
Huh.
Walter Recca, Kenny Christensen, Dwayne Weber. And I talked about Dwayne Weber.
Yes, we did.
E. Howard Hunt, who was also mentioned as being a possible candidate. Now, all of our younger viewers, let's say less than 40 years old, are going to say, who is E. Howard Hunt? But older people, well, not as old as me, but people my age and younger, down to maybe 50, they remember E. Howard Hunt. E. Howard Hunt was in the Watergate mess. He was one of the plumbers that broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate building and was caught and prosecuted for breaking in under the direction, supposedly, of President Richard Nixon. And this was right around the same time, within a year. The break-in at the Watergate was within a year after the jumping out of the airplane of Flight 305. And some people attribute him to being. So I've included a picture of him. I've included a picture of Vince Peterson. Vince Peterson's on, I think he might be on Eric's list.
He is absolutely on Eric's list, and I have a couple questions about Vince Peterson, and Eric tells a convincing tale, I will say, you know.
And then I included another one, Harry Crosby.
Sure.
So, and I took those pictures, those 9 pictures, and I showed them to 10 different people. And this is just a very, very unscientific survey. And the demographics of those people that I asked was in their 20s up to the oldest person was 83.
Sure.
And I tried to spread it around. There's two people that are in their 20s, a couple in their 30s, one in their 40s, two in their 50s, one in their 60s, and then the person who's 83 years old was the oldest person. And I said, look at all these. I put them up as a lineup, almost like a police lineup, looking in a book at photographs of people that are being like a mugshot. And I said, which one of these people looks more like the picture that you have up here on the wanted poster? And the majority of the people said that Harry Crosby looked the most like the artist rendition of D.B. Cooper.
Right.
Well, Harry Crosby is not on anybody's list.
No,
He's not. And so, but he does look like D.B. Cooper. And that was the majority. 5 out of 10 people asked picked Harry Crosby.
Yeah.
A couple picked Ted Braden. A couple of more picked McCoy. One person picked Rackshaw. And one person picked Webb and look like to the wanted poster. Well, that's all well and good. So it must be Harry Crosby, who was the oldest, said Crosby. Bing Crosby, a singer. And when that composite one of the early one version.
Yeah, I've
he like Bing Crosby. Well, we was the airplane that night. He was in his 70s at that time. Had on a parachute before. What I did next was I took all of those pictures and those people, those I mentioned, Kenny Christensen and McCoy. Those people, if they look like that,
but they don't.
But they don't look anything like each other. No. Condition. From the two students, mostly Tina Muckle. And interacting. When she translated to the artist, came up with.
Right.
So all of these people have been identified as D.B. Cooper according to that sketch by the FBI artist. And if all of them look like that, then shouldn't they look similar to each other?
You would think so, but I'm looking at this list here.
But they don't look anything like each other.
No, they don't.
And so we literally can't go by what those pictures look like for identification.
Yeah.
We got to go by other ways. A lot of the investigation says that they were parachutists. I kind of wonder what experience D.B. Cooper had as a parachutist. Number one, I wouldn't. I'm not an expert at parachuting. I have parachuted, but I wouldn't call myself an expert. I was trained on how to do it. And then I got in the plane and was foolish enough to step on the step and go off the side.
And leech off.
And
leap off.
And it was with a military parachute, similar to the one that D.B. Cooper used, except mine was steerable. Had two panels taken out of the back, two of the gores taken out of the back, so you could pull the toggles so you could get steerage, especially into the wind for a landing to slow your speed across the ground. And so that's kind of a interesting topic, conclusion that I've come, that I don't know that D.B. Cooper was experienced as all of the candidates. Many of those candidates had smoke jumping or military jumping or all other kinds of parachute training. And I'm kind of wondering if he did have all that kind of training, if he indeed is a trained parachutist. I think he may have jumped out of a plane before that, but I don't know that he was all that
talented.
All that talented as far as parachutists go.
Right.
That's what I did mathematically as far as these candidates, because if they don't look like each other, how can they look like this artist sketch?
That's a really good point. This list, I'll pull it up on the screen, and yeah.
Now, that other picture that file that I sent you, this one here, you can see D.B. Cooper's picture without glasses, and then there's all these other people who are candidates. One of them being a woman.
Yep.
And you a story on her.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's kind of an interesting story.
I'm not sure how much I believe it.
I don't know how much I believe any of them.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's the truth. Yeah.
What would you do if you hit the big lottery tonight? It's over 600,000. What would you not if you hit?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing I do is I get on the phone with my accountant. I would not tell anybody.
Great.
I wouldn't tell anybody besides an accountant and a lawyer.
Now,
yeah.
If you suddenly came into $200,000,
no one. I'm not telling
going
anybody.
out the back, who are you going to tell?
Nobody. No one.
Your accountant.
Yeah.
And your lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
And you may need both.
Yeah, you may need both.
You may
200.
need both.
Well, especially $200,000. That's $1 million now.
Yes.
You know, that's
it was a sizable amount of money.
Yeah.
And we have people now who come out of the woodwork that they are D.B. Cooper. Their deathbed became D.B. Cooper, which is interesting because and you die soon after, you can be sure that the Fed you when you're deceased.
Sure.
They may come back looking for the money, but they're not going to be you. Many people have said that they're D.B. Cooper on their deathbed. Some say I could have been D.B. Cooper. I might be D.B. And now you have children and even grandchildren who say, "Oh, that was my dad who was D.B. Cooper."
Everybody wants to paint their relatives in some, light. Everybody wants to do that. Like I feel like everyone is, as long as you have a good relationship with your family, everyone always wants to have something good to say about their family.
Yes.
Look how good my son is at baseball. Look how my dad was semi-pro or my dad would beat up your dad.
And
mentality.
my dad is D.B. Cooper.
Exactly. So that's why
the D.B. Cooper crime does not have the impact that some heinous crime would have. Sure.
We just went over H.H. Holmes. We went over Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
John Morris.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those certainly people weren't heroic, but there's something heroic
about DB.
Yes,
because he's dressed in a suit. He's looking good. He's polite.
Right.
He's in a way, I guess, flirtatious. And this whole experience for Tina is relatively romantic. he does portray,
And he doesn't hurt anybody.
No, he doesn't hurt anybody besides the airlines, which no one really cares about the airlines. Who cares about that?
Well, what everybody considers, they're insured, and they were.
Absolutely,
They were insured.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just,
It's an interesting scenario, and now comes down to the final line: did he make it or didn't he? My honest opinion is, and if you ask me tomorrow, I may have a different opinion.
Sure.
Today, as we sit here today, I believe he would have been able to safely land on the ground. And the reason being, going down in the trees can be dangerous, but it also can be one of the safest places to parachute.
Oh, really?
Because the parachute gets caught in the tree, and you either get down to the ground or you're hanging there.
Right.
And if you've got your handy dandy knife with you, you can cut yourself out of the harness that you're in. I looked at a map of that area, and a lot of people think, well, gee, he might have gone down in the Columbia River, or he could have gone into a lake and he could have drowned and things like that. The majority of that area where he jumped is not wet, not water. The majority of that is either forest or field. So his chance, I would guess by looking at the map, and I only did a quick look at the map in the area that was designated as probable jump zone, and it was 80%, approximately 80% land, and maybe 17 to 20% wet water. So the chances are, if you look at it that way, 80% chance that he's going to come down either in a forest.
Right.
And both of those are survivable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they teach you in those, especially if he had experience in the military, they teach you how to rappel down from a parachute if you're caught in trees.
Right.
They teach you how to do that. I don't know how tall the trees are there.
They're sizable.
30 feet, 50 feet.
No higher. Yeah, in that
about
area.
Yeah.
Forest land, a lot of lumber activity up there.
And it's not, that area wasn't like cut down all that often. So there's branches he could have grabbed onto. Even I don't think, and I don't think he got caught in a tree and died. I just don't think that's DB Cooper, because one, we would have found him. People were all over that area. We would have found him.
They searched the area thoroughly, and we've had 50 years of hunting, logging, hiking,
treasure hunters.
All of those people have been going through that area.
Yeah.
Especially after 5 grand was found at Tina Bar on the Columbia River. That gave people a whole resurgence to go out and look for the money. Sure. As Darren said last week, when he was a kid and he lived in that area, let's go look for DB Cooper's money.
Right.
It was the thing to do.
Right.
And you would have thought after all of these years, if the money was out there, and the remnants of either he or the parachute or the harness, some of that would still be there. The buckles, the webbing, maybe not the chute itself, and maybe not DB if he was hanging from a tree. But
you got to think
there's going to be signs.
Of all the materials in the case, the bomb-making materials in the case would be there. Certainly the cash would be spread all over the place.
Right.
It's just, to me, he got down.
Now, the water issue at Tina Bar, and we've both seen photographs of some of that money, and it was in bad shape.
Yeah, oh yeah.
From being in the water. They estimated it had to have been in the water for about the time that he jumped, about 8 years.
I saw a thing, saying about 3,000 days.
Right, right. So they were partially dissolved. So they were probably wet a lot of the time. And how it got there, that's a story unto itself.
I know Eric has a really good story of Tina Bar and his theory behind it, and he's really active in. I think he's going to be really active in the search of Tina Bar in recent, not like now. Like I think it'll be like within the next couple of months, he'll be searching that area, and I'm going to ask him about that. I'm really excited. So if you guys do have questions, Eric will be joining in, and I'm assuming 5 minutes. So make sure you guys are throwing your questions down below so that I can ask these questions, because I got a notepad of questions that I already have for him. But I want to make sure that I get your questions to him directly. So, Tina Bar.
Yes, Tina Bar, and somebody has investigated Tina Bar in the last year or two. Tina Bar is underwater now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The river has changed. They dredge out there because that's a seaway.
Sure.
Tina Bar, Columbia River is an inland seaway. There's a lot of ships that travel that route, and where Tina Bar was located in 1971, 1976, or whenever the late 1970s when the money was discovered, Tina Bar has changed. The area has changed because that's what happens with erosion and climate change and all the things that go along with ecology of the Columbia River in the Northwest has affected all of that area, including Tina Bar. So as Tina Bar was like a sandbar that was exposed, and a 8-year-old was digging and dug up a stack of money, still in its original wrapper and rubber band.
Sure.
That area has changed since then.
Tina Bar, what Tina Bar was basically, it's private property. You can't go there without permission. But it was like an area at that point where you could go. There was a little box. You could give a quarter or a buck, and fishermen would go there. It was very like down, like low key.
Right.
Not everybody knows about it. Only like the real fishermen of that area went there. So it wasn't like a beach.
Right.
So it was like the middle of the woods, and you got this little sandy area. And fishermen would stand there and fish, and people would go there and camp every so often. But you had to like know someone to get there. It's kind of the impression that I got, and it's not easy to get to. It's basically like an island.
It's out there, and it's accessible by a dirt road. Which runs not too far away from it, but it is not. It's off the beaten track for sure.
Absolutely.
And how the money ever wound up there, that's a good question. What's
your view of this case? Like, how do you see this?
My evolution of what my feeling is about this has changed over the years.
Sure.
From when it happened in 1971. I remember when it happened in 71 because I was having Thanksgiving dinner the next day, which was Thanksgiving. I first went to my relative's house where we all had dinner and watched the Detroit Lions playing football on Thanksgiving Day, and of course we're in the Thanksgiving belt here where we are in Massachusetts. We're only 20 miles away from where it all happened, America's hometown in Plymouth, and the talk of the day, other than football, was some guy jumped out over the Pacific Northwest.
Imagine the headlines.
With 200 G's.
Yeah.
Now, 200 G's back then, $200,000, was a big, big amount of money.
Sure.
And
it was about $1 million or so, give or take a couple of bucks.
It's worth, in today's dollars, it's worth a sizable, much more than that. And the reason my viewpoint has evolved over the time is I'm always expecting somebody to say,
found something.
Found some of that money.
Or have you thought about this?
Right.
And the thing about the DB Cooper case and like the forums that I've been on, the Facebook pages, all that stuff, and the podcasts and stuff, what I've really realized about this is that it's a community that it kind of all works together. You know, like I've done a little bit of research on like Amelia Earhart, and it seems like that community is always like infighting. But but DB Cooper, it's just, you know, it's a solid network of people that, you know.
I had an interesting theory, and it's just a theory.
Sure.
And my theory was, they say, the authorities, that all of these bills, $200,000 $20 bills, were photographed.
Yeah.
In a machine that did that.
Sure.
And then they came out with a list of numbers. Being on the lookout for these numbers.
Right. Right. And there are that you, the viewers, can, if you find a 1969, 1963 series $20 bill, you know what? I mean, certain bills have gone for over $1,000. These DB Cooper bills are in pretty good condition. If you have one that's in excellent condition, you're going to be sitting on more than $20. So if you have an old series bill, you know, make sure that you put it into one of these sites, you know, search the socials and stuff like that.
AI
the numbers.
All you'd have to do is the serial number into AI, and it will tell you whether it's a match. You have to go through all the numbers that are on the list. My theory is, what if they did not photograph all of those, and all of those numbers lists were just random numbers that they really don't have for those that were given to DB Cooper.
Absolutely.
They just had to make DB Cooper think that they were recorded. When found at Tina Bar, who said that came from DB Cooper's stash of $200,000?
Absolutely.
Who said that?
Yeah.
The authorities.
Right.
So if you want to be the authorities, then the money found at Tina Bar was DB Cooper money.
Sure thing.
But to use that little scenario I have, that they didn't get the money photographed, that they just stacked up $200,000 worth of $20 bills, and then came out with that number list a week later and said, be on the lookout for these bills. And that was going to stop DB Cooper from spending that money.
Right. You know, I just got word in that we have Eric Eulis here on the line.
Great.
So Eric, can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine, guys. How you doing?
We are doing really good. Thank you. Rich, you should have a headset right there for you.
Oh, great.
I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit here. Hopefully that's fine. I'm just trying to tweak it a little bit. I'm all Hollywood, you know. I'm trying to make sure it looks good. So either way. So how you guys doing?
We're doing good. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. We really appreciate it. Right down the street, Rhode Island, Massachusetts up here. So, you know, we appreciate the time being here. I'd like to introduce you to Rich Little. He's my co-host here on the podcast.
Hey, Rich, how you doing? I'm doing well.
See you. So, really,
mystery, and back in 1971, you know, I think that I mean, DB Cooper was sort of immediately a cult hero right off the bat, but I mean, there was a certain perception that the public had of the guy. 50 years out, 54 years out now, it's almost something that it's hard to realize a real event. This really happened, and this was a real person, you know. And we're not Bigfoot here or the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, this dude really rolled, you know. Absolutely. So I think that sort of adds to the allure of it. How my perspective on this thing has changed over the years. Obviously, I've greatly refined my understanding of the case and who I think DB Cooper was. But fundamentally speaking, when I really got engaged with the case, which was probably about 2007, 2006, something in that time frame there, I believe then and I believe now that this case is solvable. Absolutely. And I firmly believe that now. In fact, I think it's imminent. I think it's very, very close to being solved. And that's primarily because of the enhances in science and technology.
Now, I've heard you say on different shows that you believe that this case will be solved by the 60th anniversary. Do you believe that?
I think there's a very good chance it's solved by the 60th anniversary. I wouldn't be surprised if it was solved within the next year, to be honest with you. Yeah.
What advances have really pushed the investigation? I know that you had, motioned at the FBI to let you access the DB Cooper tie and tie clip to do testing on it with a professional. And
yeah, that's by Duncan, by the way. So that's a New England thing. Everybody in New England appreciates that. But to answer your question, I think the real turnaround here, or where a lot of progress is being made, really lies on two fronts: tie and the tie particles. The tie that Cooper left behind has been analyzed extensively. Particles that have come from the tie have been analyzed under a scanning electron microscope multiple times now, and that tells a story. The evidence tells a story, and that's where I live. I mean, I'm a guy who or zeroes in on the evidence, because it's like I've said before, the evidence doesn't give a shit what anybody else thinks. It doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't care. The evidence is the evidence. The evidence speaks to the truth. It doesn't have an agenda. The evidence cannot lie. It tells a story. And our job, or my job as a police investigator, is to look at the evidence and try to do what is telling me, what it's telling us, what the truth is. So that's why I like that, because now tie is critically important, and also, frankly, the DNA, the enhances in DNA testing. When the FBI first pulled genetic material off the tie for the purpose of trying to affect some sort of DNA profile, this was 2001. 2001 to 2025 in terms of DNA testing is like light years apart. I mean, this is the Wright brothers versus Star Trek kind of difference. So it's very, very important to understand that. Touch DNA in particular, which is what I'm primarily interested in, the one part of the tie, that didn't even exist in 2001. In fact, the first sort of inklings of touch DNA and that type of thing being viable started occurring about 2005. Fast forward 20 years to 2025, and again, we're in a completely different world. So you can have a very small amount of genetic material and learn an awful lot. And metagenomic DNA testing, all this kind of stuff. So I have a lot of hope that ultimately the DNA will play a critical part in determining who this guy was. The very big problem with that is the FBI, is law enforcement or the authorities, and specifically the FBI, because they obviously hold the tie in their custody. They've been unwilling to play ball. They've been unwilling to really entertain the offers of serious-minded people like me and a DNA specialist, gain access to the tie, see what we can pull off in terms of genetic material, expend private resources to sequence what we can sequence. They've been unwilling to do that, which is somewhat frustrating. Or even something as simple as maybe just hand over the profile that they have, which is currently locked in the CODIS system, the partial DNA profile that they pulled in 2001. I mean, if we could just even get that could be helpful. Now, having said that, we can't be certain that the 2001 profile is actually DB Cooper's. It's possible that it's somebody else. So, but nonetheless, if the FBI were were willing to play ball and let us have at it, I think that would definitely help. But one way or the other, we're going to figure out who this guy was.
Sure thing. Rich, I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, we looked at some of the candidates today, and I was comparing them to the artist sketch that was done within days of the hijacking. And I've found that there is recognition, this facial recognition, that they can compare a sketch to a photograph. Do you know of anybody that's done any work on that to try to eliminate some of those candidates that have been identified as DB Cooper? And I know that the sketch that was done by the FBI is just that. But has anybody ever done a comparison between individual photographs and that sketch to see if there's anything there?
The short answer is yeah, but not anybody that's credible. And let me explain that. As far as I know, the FBI law enforcement hasn't done that, and for the obvious reasons, because it isn't worth anything. Which sketch? You've got multiple DB Cooper sketches, which just by sight, just by looking at them, you can tell are materially, obviously, is critically important. But I know there was one television that tried to use, that artificial intelligence or, facial recognition stuff. And I don't really, but it's honestly, it's kind of a waste of time, to be honest with you. Yeah. And the reality of the situation is DB Cooper, it seems likely to me that he altered his appearance in some way. It may have been as simple as just hair on a different side. Maybe he dyed his hair with Grecian formula. We know he wore sunglasses, so that didn't help as far as his eyes are concerned. Maybe he had a beard and then shaved it off. I mean, there are a number of ways to easily alter your appearance to make it that much more difficult for people to identify. So I don't know that there's really any value in the, facial recognition stuff. Now, if you had a photograph, different story, but sketch, no go.
Now, I've had an extensive conversation or multiple with Cliff Ammerman, the control tower operator.
Ammerman.
Can you talk a little bit about that and a little bit about how the control tower lost connection with Flight 305 and the consequences of that may have been now with your theory?
Well, I think I know what you're talking about. Cliff Ammerman, importantly, was not in the control tower. He was with Seattle Air Traffic Control. So there's literally the guys in the control tower at SeaTac Airport or Portland Airport, PDX. But where Cliff Ammerman was air traffic control, they deal with sort of the broader national system. There are various regions around the country. The region has its own airspace. Now, is as the jet was at threshold where it transitioned to a different region, a different altitude, a different region, and there's typically a handoff to the next carrier, and that was bungled. It was bungled. So there was a period of time, and off the top of my head, I want to say it was something around 15 minutes or so, where whoever Flight 305 was communicating with, the wrong air traffic controller. It was the air traffic controller at a different level, different altitude. Now, why that's important? It's not that the jet was in any real imminent danger or anything else, but why that's really important is that the conversations during that 15-minute period of time or thereabouts, we don't have transcripts of that conversation. Now, critically, this is the time Cooper jumped. So, in particular, the co-pilot, a guy named Bill Radicek, whom I've also had conversations with about this, he's expressed this publicly, but he also told me this. At the time DB Cooper was walking down the stairs, it was a cockpit based upon sort of the instruments kind of fluttering a little bit, that something was going on, that DB Cooper was messing around with the stairs. Then there's sort of a pressure bump that they attribute to DB Cooper actually leaving the stairs, and the air stairs springing back up like a diving board into the fuselage, the back bottom of the fuselage, and creating this sort of light popping sensation in the ears. And Bill Radicek told me that he mentioned something to the air traffic control ATC that, mark your shrimp boats or mark your whatever. This is, I think our friend just took leave of us. Words to that effect. The problem is we don't have that in the transcripts. Why that would have been nice to have in the transcripts is the transcripts were timed with absolute precision. We would have known exactly when DB Cooper jumped, and we don't. We have a pretty good idea within 1 or 2 minutes, but we really don't know precisely when he jumped. And when you got a jet traveling 3 minutes, well, you can see that's a little bit of a problem.
Sure.
So that's how, as a practical matter, it's kind of messed things up to some degree. And that's not the only example. That's not the only example of mistakes being made along the path of this jet. Not only on the part of like air traffic control in this case, but also the FBI in particular as they've investigated.
Sure. Now, if another briefcase or even the bomb-making material, parachute, any type of additional evidence, even some more bills were to pop up either in the woods or in society, and we could prove that through serial numbers, how would that change the case? Would it reopen the FBI case pretty much immediately?
Yeah, I think it would. I think the FBI said as much. I think they would open it at least temporarily to exhaust that new lead. Sure. As a practical matter, let's say you found a $20 bill. I don't know that it would really. I don't know that there's much we could learn, unless, of course, it was a situation where a piggy bank and it had been sitting there for 50 years, and Uncle Joe gave them this $20 bill as a birthday gift, 50 years ago, and it just kind of sat in the piggy bank. Well, then obviously that would be critical. But if it's just one of those things where you just happen to get it out of an ATM, right. I don't know that there's much you can get out of it. And I'm not sure what was the other. Was there another part to your question there as far as the?
I was just wondering how it would change the case. Yeah, if any of the materials were found.
Yeah, now that is important, and that's why I'm searching, and I've been searching, and I'm going to continue to search because I'm trying to find new evidence.
Absolutely,
there's nothing better than getting our hands on some new evidence, So
especially with you and your YouTube channel, if you were to find it, pull your camera out, man, you're going viral.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's right. Just Eric Ulis. Just go to YouTube and search Eric Ulis. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I am searching on the 17th of September, so that's coming up in about 3 weeks here, and I'm going to
ask about that.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to search, but I will be filming this stuff. A lot of this stuff is going to be filmed, so I'll be putting really kind of hot off the press, active content on my YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to just go to YouTube and look up Eric Ulis, ERICULIS, you can find my channel, subscribe, and that stuff will just pop up there when it pops up. But that's really important. That evidence is really important for a couple of reasons. Now, the parachutes, there's some value in that, but, I don't know. I mean, probably not a hell of a lot, other than it gives us a really good idea where the guy landed, which I think settles an old question, where did he actually land? But if there are components of the bomb, which I think was fake, but let's say he discarded the attaché case at the same time, and it still had the component bomb in there, very good chance that attaché case is still closed and buttoned up and buried under some organic chance that the electric used would contain some DNA, because that shit's sticky, so that's going to have pulled off some genetic material, as well as it could contain fingerprint, not to mention the components themselves, the road flare, batteries, whatever is in there. We can figure out, well, where did it come from? Where did the attaché case came from? Okay, it came from Sears. It's a model 2500. I mean, there are things we can do to kind of help go back in time and figure out where these things came from, and ultimately where DB Cooper came from. Again, putting aside the electrical and the DNA and everything else that could come from it, that would be an enormous breakthrough if we found or something like that. Sure. But yeah. So it's important.
Rich, you're up.
Yeah, last week when Aaron was here, we asked him who his number one candidate was. And I'd like to ask you, out of the cast of characters who were are D.B. Cooper, do you have a theory of who your candidate would be out of those, or would it be somebody out of the blue different?
I think how I want to answer this question. I am currently working an aspect, an angle of this case that is new and I think is really important. And I'm not going to speak too much to it, but I will say this much. I do not believe that any of the people that have been mentioned thus far as suspects, persons of interest, or what have you, Cooper.
Sure.
I don't think any of these people are D.B. Cooper. And so, you know, and I was even talking against Peterson more recently. I've said many times before that I think he's either D.B. Cooper or he D.B. Cooper. I don't believe he was D.B. Cooper, but I D.B. Cooper. So in that way, I don't think any of the persons of interest or suspects that have been hammered out so far, who have been put forward thus far, are D.B. Cooper. And I think that's pretty easy to demonstrate based upon the physical evidence that came from the tie. And it's an interesting thing to me that as people bring forward new suspects, and it happens constantly, the one thing that nobody ever really seems to have a good explanation for, how did he get all these rare elements, you know, specialty metals, titanium, alloyed, and zinc, copper, tin, stainless steel, aluminum, all these things. Where exactly was D.B. Cooper to collect all of these things in the late 1960s, maybe as late as 1971? And typically nobody has a really good explanation, and which is a problem.
Right.
You know, if you can't explain the tie, then he ain't the guy. It just comes down to that. It's as simple as that. If it doesn't match the evidence, then he isn't him. You know, I don't care how badass his story is, Green Beret, you know, whatever, killed people on the weekends. It's all meaningless. I mean, stories in a D.B. Cooper case are a dime a dozen. You know, badass stories of badass guys are a dime a dozen. It doesn't impress me, and who cares? I'm interested in the evidence and tying D.B. Cooper or suspects or persons of interest to the evidence as far as we understand it, and ultimately putting a finger on the guy in that way.
Sure. Is D.B. Cooper James Bond or an evil criminal?
Well, he's a criminal, to be sure. I think he was zealous. I think this was a one-off event. I think he's a pretty bright guy. I think he jammed up and this was his ticket out. I think he was successful. You know, obviously he didn't harm. It did cause some mental anguish and stress, in particular among the family and the crew. You know, the captain of the flight, who's since passed, Bill Scott. I know his daughter was 16 years of age at the time that the skyjacking took place. And, you know, I've had conversations with her about, you know, what it was like, because they kind of knew in real time. You know, they were like, you know, they were communicating with Northwest Orient via telephone, you know, updates on this thing as it was unfolding, and they didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, they don't know if the guy's going to blow up or the is going to go down and she's going to lose her father. You know, and hey, the guy's D.B. Cooper. You know, he kind of rolled like the time it's happening. It's a different story. So, be sure there was some anguish and anxiety tied in with that, but beyond that, you know, as far as even the flight crew itself, like for example, the flight attendant Tina Mucklow, who had conversations with him, she's publicly stated that he was, you know, basically a gentleman, skyjacking the jet, threatening everybody, notwithstanding. He didn't curse. There was no cursing involved, and he wasn't threatening to blow up people with a gun or anything. I mean, he was, all things considered, pretty gentlemanly, as odd as that sounds, which I think, accounts for something. You know what I'm saying? So I think they realize, listen, we play ball with the guy. We don't mess around. We just give him what he wants. We'll be left alone and we'll be fine. And ultimately, that's what happened. So
sure. Now, Rich, you had a interesting idea last week on our first DB Cooper episode, and that was around the possibility of the attaché case containing a ham radio of some sort. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, that's just my theory, that would it have been possible that in that attaché case that he had road flares that he could possibly use for either some type of signaling or illumination on his way down, and possibly a CB radio, which he could have a co-conspirator on the ground to coordinate his trip out of Dodge to get out of there. Is there been any investigation or any talk about anything like that happening?
Well, as far as the road flares and using them to signal on the way down, I don't think that, I don't think that's possible. And first of all, I think a foolish idea, because, anybody in the greater Vancouver area who's looking at the sky is going to see these UFO objects descend. And what better way to draw attention to yourself than be lit up giving a performance mid-air, So I think that's a really, really bad idea. The other thing is a practical matter. When do you light them? You sure as hell not lighting them once you jump from the jet. You're not lighting them. So you'd have to light them on the jet, and there's just simply no evidence of some of that back of the jet before he jumps out. So I just don't think that's possible. A radio, sure, that's entirely possible. Maybe he had some sort of accomplice on the ground somewhere that he could contact through shortwave radio. But I think the really big problem with that would be, where are you?
Right.
DB Cooper lands. I'm like, hey, Joe, I'm on the ground. Well, where the hell are you? I don't know. I mean, how do you know where you are? So that's a really big problem. It seems much more likely that if he had an accomplice and he was looking to get secret in the area by way of an accomplice, it seems to me that his best course of action would have been to walk to the nearest payphone and then make a call from the payphone. From the payphone, you could obviously obtain reasonably quickly where you actually are. So might do it. So I don't think that he used a radio or anything of that nature. As a practical matter, it just seems very daunting. I also don't think he had an accomplice on the ground. I don't think it's unnecessary, and I just don't think he had one. There's nothing to indicate that he had one.
Into any sort of hotel that, because there is that $1 million question of where did he come from? How did he get to the airport? Car, how did he get there? And I've listened to some of your podcasts. I kind of had an Eric Eulis week into all your shows, so I was kind of preparing for this. And I've heard you talk about if he didn't get that back seat in the plane, the back row, he might have just taken the flight and then just planned another one. So did the FBI look into any of these possible hotel stays, into any strange aliases?
Yeah, the FBI looked extensively around Portland at hotels, motels, rental car agencies, bus drivers, taxi drivers, restaurants in the airport around the area. So they did look extensively into that area and try to ascertain where he came from, and they came away empty-handed. They even looked at the parking garage, cars that maybe were abandoned in the parking garage at the airport, things of that nature. Came away with nothing. I know that they at some point wanted to look into passenger manifests for flights, but this was longer than 6 months out from the skyjacking. Why that's important is because the airlines, I'm not sure why, but the records of passengers and that kind of thing were just discarded. Come up with a list of passengers. I don't know that it would have meant a hell of a lot anyway, because back then, 71, you didn't need to present any identification or a real name. So, Leroy Jones could have been DB Cooper flying in from Seattle that morning, and then he flew out as Dan Cooper later that afternoon. And how are you ever going to put that together?
Sure.
So that's I don't know that there's much that could have been gleaned from that, but they did look into it. They even went as far as looking into payphones. They looked at payphone records around that whole Vancouver area where they believe he jumped. Not the whole area, but sort of the area where they believed he jumped. They looked at payphone records to see if maybe he did exactly what I described. He went to the nearest payphone and called somebody, but they came away with nothing. There wasn't a hell of a lot of payphone activity, as you can imagine, on Thanksgiving Eve in the middle of nowhere, but there were some long distance calls and things that were placed. So the authorities did a look into it. I have to say, on measure, I think the authorities actually did a pretty good job. They were pretty thorough in terms of trying to figure out who this guy was, where he came from, where he went, what happened. But obviously, the more the time went by, they just came away with nothing.
I have one quick question, and this doesn't do DB Cooper, but with the airplane. I've read that they took that airplane to Reno as planned, and it was landed with the stairs down. And I often wondered, did that actually happen? They actually landed a 727 with the air stairs deployed. Do you know anything about that?
That is exactly what happened. The air stairs, it's important for people to understand that the Boeing 727 was unique. There was one other jet, a DC-9, that had the same sort of thing, but it was unique in the sense that they had these air stairs that would deploy from the back bottom of the fuselage. Now, the reason that it was designed with air stairs is that the 727 itself was designed to service smaller airports that didn't have necessarily a jetway to get to board passengers or deplane passengers, or maybe they didn't have a pickup truck that had this kind of has the stairs on the back of the pickup truck to help people get up on the jet and off the jet. So the nice thing about a 727 is you could land at a small airport, and people the jet plane the jet with just the jet itself. It didn't need any additional equipment on the ground. So in the case of DB Cooper, he jumped from those rear air stairs, and there was no way to pull them back up. Mid-flight, there must have been some way to pull them back up mid-flight, but that would have entailed them going to the back and then somehow affecting something and having the stairs, hydraulically pulled back up. But they didn't do that because they were not permitted. The flight crew was not permitted, according to Cooper's orders, to come in the back. So ultimately, they did land the jet with the air stairs open, and the air stairs, hit the ground, obviously hit the runway and dragged along the runway and everything else. The damage that was done was a big deal. I mean, the jet was able to fly the very next day back up to Seattle. But yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Cool. I do have a question from an audience member here. Pond Poppin' Dan asks, why did the FBI give up on the case? Did they think it wasn't important?
Well, I'll just tell you what the FBI said. The reason that they said that they closed the case down, which was 2016. So at that point, it'd been 45 years. Basically, they determined that, by 2016, 45 years later, DB Cooper probably is no longer alive. That's the first thing. And they really have nothing to work with at this point. And they just, as a practical matter, expending taxpayer dollars on trying to determine who DB Cooper was 45 years earlier just doesn't seem a prudent way to be spending taxpayer dollars when you've got terrorism and all that kind of stuff you need to concern yourself with. So they basically closed the case. They decided we give up. We call uncle on that, throw up our hands, we close it. Of course, they always reserve the right to reopen it if somebody later on finds the parachute or some of the money or something else happens. But it just ceased being an active investigation. Not that it was particularly active beforehand, but it just ceased being an active investigation up to that point. So I don't think there's anything nefarious there. I don't think there was a government cover-up or anything of that nature. I just think it's just a business decision at that point to shut the case, close the case down.
Sure. Rich, you're up.
I've got it.
You got it. Eric, do you want to talk a bit about the search that's going to be going on September 17th out in around the Tina Bar area, and your theory as to where he jumped? Do you want to talk about your search and what your future?
Sure. I mean, I'll just say that I am absolutely convinced of a couple of things in this case. And one of those couple of things in this case is the drop zone where the FBI believed DB Cooper jumped is wrong. I think they're off by a handful of miles.
Sure.
And therefore, that's why they haven't found anything. 50 years or 54 years rather, area indicate the guy was ever there. Moreover, what was found, $6,000 of DB Cooper's money on February 10th, 1980, was found in a spot completely unrelated to where the FBI believes he jumped. Again, the money is evidence. The evidence doesn't lie. The evidence doesn't have an agenda. The evidence is the truth.
Sure.
And I think what the evidence in this case is telling us is that where DB Cooper actually landed was very near where the money was found. That's $6,000. So that is an area, very importantly, that has never been searched by FBI. Now, the immediate beach area where the money was found in 1980 was searched. They were looking for additional money, parachute, anything else. They didn't find anything. And of course, intervening decades, Mother Nature has had her way, has stripped it away. It is completely. Even if the FBI had overlooked something in 1980 during their cursory search of the area, it's certainly been unearthed by Mother Nature herself at some happened. Now, moving inland a little bit further, half a mile away from the beach, a mile away from the beach, to some of this basically open agricultural field in some areas where there are tranches of trees and that type of thing. That area has never been searched outside of some searching that I've done there. So that's the area that I'm looking, because I firmly believe that where DB Cooper actually jumped and landed put him probably half a mile to a mile away from Tina Bar, and probably landed in a field, an open agricultural field, because about 95% of the land there is just that. It's just open, growing corn and that kind of stuff. And I believe that DB Cooper, being a man of relatively sound mind, landing after descending from the clouds with a big white parachute, probably his first thought was, I got to get the hell out of Dodge. Maybe somebody saw me landing, and, is the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines going to immediately show up in this field here 10 minutes. So I think he immediately lands, balls up the parachute, and immediately runs to the woods, because there's some woods that kind of surround the field. Those fields around there, probably woods. And once he was out of the middle of the field, I think he took off the stuff, discarded to the beach, to the Columbia River, was Tina Bar, for the purpose of burying the money temporarily in a place from where he discarded the parachute. And there are a couple of practical reasons for that stuff just hastily chucked on the field or whatever. Maybe a dog covers it. You don't want your $200,000 sitting there. You want to separate those two items. But the other thing is the earth there, the ground there is would be very, very difficult, time consuming to bury the money there in one of those agricultural field areas. Tina Bar, the sand, a completely different story. In fact, I actually I had a years ago where I essentially recreated landing there with 70 pounds worth of parachute and gear. Went to Tina Bar, just using my hands, stick, rocks, whatever I could find, whatever implements I could find on the ground, buried the $200,000 in cash. And I had a bag that was properly sized to see how long it would take. And then I walked the 11 miles down the only road out of the area to Vancouver to see how long it would take and see how easy it would be. And it was no problem. It took me about 2.5 hours to do it. It was no big deal. Importantly, the money, burying the money on the beach, it took me 90 seconds. It took me 90 seconds to show up on the beach with this 20-pound bag of cash, just with my hands, carve out a hole in the sand, throw the cash in the sand, cover it back up to where you couldn't see that was anything buried there, and leave. It took 90 seconds. Very easy to do. So I think that's what happened. I think that's exactly what D.B. Cooper did. Now, having said all that, the parachutes, I believe, and there were two parachutes. They're somewhere in that area there. And I've identified a few spots of interest to me that I'm in these areas, and typically I'm looking at areas that are, sort of like depressions in the ground, like holes in the ground, basically, or sort of like catch basins that are grown with sticker bushes and trees and have water in them at certain points of the year. If he had simply gone to the edge and chucked the parachutes into this area here, just given the nature of the vegetation and everything else, they would still be there today. You would never see them. You never find them. Nobody's walking down in these areas because they're pretty hazardous. And I think that's where that's where the stuff would still be. So that's what I'm doing. I'm shagging my ass down there and kind of hacking through with a machete and foot by foot, painstakingly trying to see if the parachutes are somewhere in that area there. And awesome. The parachutes are durable. I mean, these, they're canvas, and there's a good possibility that those are still around. They're somewhat rotted, but importantly, there are a lot of stainless steel components that make up these parachutes, those rigs. The stainless steel is still there. That isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So that's what I'm looking for. And like I said, also perhaps even the attaché case that carries the bomb.
That would be awesome. I hope you find something, and I would love to see it on your YouTube channel. What a amazing, just upload that would be, and potentially, get some answers on this case. So awesome.
Sure would be.
That'd be great.
It's time.
What's that?
It is time.
Oh yeah, it is time.
It is time. And like I said, I mean, part of this is just fun. I mean, that's just the way my mind works. Ever since I've always been. I mean, like I've said before, I mean, I'm a kid who needed to figure out how to do. My background professionally actually is for the card counting blackjack thing. You guys are from the Boston area, so you're probably familiar with the MIT guys that played, go to Vegas. That's my game. So, and that, that part of that is just beating the casino at their own game, figuring out how to beat the game of blackjack in this case. So that's just how my mind works. That's the stuff I love. So in the case of the D.B. Cooper mystery, part of me, that competitive part of me, that's like, you know what, the guy who figures it out. I want to be the guy who solves this thing. And I think it is solvable. I think it's eminently solvable. And there we go. But so it's fun to do. I think it eventually will be solved. I like to think that I'm as well positioned as anybody to solve it, because I think, putting boots on the ground is a really important part of this thing. But beyond that, there's, there are other avenues. Boots on the ground aspect. There's the stuff with the type particles, you're bringing stuff into a lab and you're trying to ascertain the evidence, and you're looking at the data tell us and everything else. So that's sort of the second major prong of the investigation here. But one way or the other, we'll figure out who this guy was.
Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your day and your morning to come by, zoom in, and be on. We really appreciate it so much.
My pleasure. Anytime, guys. Just let me know when.
Yeah, and good luck on your expedition.
Absolutely. We're talking about doing an episode on the museum, you know, right up the street. I'd love to chat with you about the gardening museum. That whole thing. So
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to you about that in the future at some point.
Yeah, I'm down with the garden museum because that's another really, really
I've started watching stuff on you know, examining the fire pit particles and looking at the canvas and so I've already started.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's all science based. I'm saying there's like
Sure.
the science part of it. You know, you
Right.
find some, you know, you dig into a fireplace and you start finding stuff that's consistent with 16th century paint or canvases. It's like, well, how did that stuff get here? You know,
Right.
So that's what it's about. But yeah, the Gardner Museum. The one thing about the Gardner Museum is I think it actually in a lot of ways I think that's a little easier to solve. It's easier to figure out. I think I'm convinced Brian McDevitt was the guy behind it.
I would love to go over it with you one day via Zoom, something like this. Go over it.
Yeah, we can go over it all. Yeah.
Absolutely. So. Well, I wish you the best of luck with the investigation. I can't wait to hear about it. I'm already subscribed on your channel. I've been watching, and I'm
good man.
I'm definitely going to be following it. And if you want, I encourage you to send me through text or email all of your links where people can find you, your website, YouTube, different podcasts that you've been on. If you have those particular links, anywhere that people can go and keep track of everything, please send it to me. All that stuff will be in the description. All that will be in the pinned comments. So I encourage the audience, please make sure that you go and follow. This is it. So Eric, thank you again so much for coming on, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.
Wish you luck, 1 7-up at a time.
There you go. Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Have a good one, Eric. Thank you.
You do the same. You bet.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye.
So, Rich, what do we think happened?
Well, that was an interesting conversation.
Absolutely.
And
I love it. It's so fun. The Zooms are so good.
I learned some things that I didn't know before.
Right.
Because it's pretty specific. If you read reports from the FBI, et cetera, that they have it all mapped out where he landed, and Eric is saying, not so quick. Maybe not.
No.
And follow the money.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what he's doing. And perhaps that's exactly what the FBI should have done, was follow the money. When they found that money at Tina Bar, that's a clue.
Sure.
And they didn't interpret it as a clue. They interpreted it as a fluke, or it washed downstream.
It went upriver, and
all of those things.
It got dragged out there by an ocean liner.
Yeah, all of those things that went along to that. There's an explanation for why that money wound up there.
Sure.
And I wish Eric the best of luck in his journey to the Pacific Northwest. I wish we were going. I think
I've actually been thinking like you know, the ad revenue from YouTube. I would love to reinvest that in a trip out there with Eric. I'm going to text him about it and see if I can do some you know, documentation.
You might be the guy to discover.
Maybe. How awesome would that be? I'm walking through the woods and I trip over a case and I open up the my heart's pounding out my chest like this, you know, it's beating all over the place. Open it up and there's a stick of dynamite.
And when I hear that on TV that you found that and I call you, you're going to say, Rich who?
I'm not. No. The thing is, if I find that, I'm showing Eric. But you know what? I'm doing it right there. Me and you FaceTiming. We're doing that whole thing. It's this podcast first, but that would be amazing. You know, I'm just dreaming at this point.
So what do we got in our future?
I would love to do the gardening museum.
I've already started research on that.
That's a really good one. I've been talking about in the comments. People are asking for more about Oswald and JFK. So there's a couple of different things that we can text about. But if you guys are we're live right now. So if you guys want a particular you know, subject, throw it in the comments. I have them pulled up right here. I'm reading them. So I appreciate all you guys talking to us and making these lives really, you know, something.
Yeah, you've made these a lot of fun. All the comments that are coming in, this our job here isn't our main job in life. this is fun for us, and we appreciate all of your comments on all of our podcasts. Me personally, I'm totally in case.
Absolutely. Book right here.
I do have my book right here, and it was a good week. A lot of people who saw our podcast last week and the weeks before on the Lizzie board, and one on the final one on the autopsy. They have contacted me, and I want to personally thank you, Seth, for bringing me into the future, because we met on Thursday, and you officially got me onto the platform formerly known as Facebook. It's been a while. I've been my presence has been limited there.
Sure.
And so I want to thank you for getting me all up to speed on that.
Not a problem.
And I've had some interesting comments from people from the past. I got a comment from a former student, has to be 50 years ago.
Wow.
1972, she said. That'd be 52 years ago.
Yeah,
that was
right around
D.B. Cooper. Yes, unbelievable.
But we did get a really nice comment here from Judy Holiday. She says that she's been following us for about 3 months now. So Judy, I don't know what camera's on right now, but whichever
thank
camera.
you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy, very, very much.
You wanted to announce about the...
that's right. Yeah. Okay, so we did get another super thanks. I'd have to pull this up real quick.
Yeah, that's exciting, and we want to thank you for your support on that, because that's what makes the show go.
Absolutely.
That and coffee.
Absolutely, yes. You can shop the official coffee at coffeebyseth.com. Let me just pull this.
Okay, and while you're doing that, I'll keep talking. I'll talk a little bit about some of the comments that I recently got on Lizzie about what's the possibility that Uncle John had an accomplice. One of the viewers, one of the comments that I got said, do you think that Uncle John, that's my theory, that he is the culprit in this particular case, and he alone is responsible for the deaths of Mr. and Mrs. Borden. And it's based on my fact of, especially on the autopsy show that we had, about the skull damage being almost identical, except one was on the left side in Mr. Borden's case, and on the right side on Mrs. Borden's case. And the wounds were very, very closely matched, and it looked like somebody who knew what they were doing. And we all know that Uncle John's profession was
butcher.
He was a butcher.
So we do have the super thanks up right here. I want to say a special thank you to Kathy Flanders 6688. You are going to receive the first coffee cheers, or even 7-Up cheers.
7-Up cheers, DB.
7-Up cheers of the week. So thank you so much. Comment down below. I want to do one of these every single week.
This is fun.
The super thanks are absolutely keeping the show going, so we really appreciate it. So the coffee cheers of the week. Thank you very, very much, Katie. And we have we have a whole bunch of people that are very active in our comment section.
Yeah, and if you would like to see any particular crime discussed, please leave it in the comments and let us know, because we're looking for things to do.
Absolutely.
And for places to go.
Absolutely. So you guys can check out, what's that?
Another comment.
What do we got? Director Caroline's telling me we got a good comment. What do we got?
How about the North End molasses flood?
North End molasses
Oh,
flood.
wow.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, really?
From Pond Pop and Dan?
I do.
I don't know anything about it, so
I
know
worked.
a little bit?
I worked in Boston right out of high school.
Okay.
And I don't mean this year of high school. I mean, when I graduated from high school, I worked the summer after, and I was told by people who are in there that, gee, on a hot day like this, you can smell sweet. And they were right. You could smell it. And what it was the remnants of the great molasses flood in Boston.
What?
Back years and years before. And
I don't know anything about this. This is crazy.
Well, I'll fill you up. There's a book or two written about it. And
I'll have to do some research.
I will. That's a good one because there were deaths involved and there was court action involved. And of course, what do they use molasses for?
Yeah. What?
Rum.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I didn't know that. But Rich, this has been a great episode. I want to thank everybody on the live stream for your comments.
Thank you, everyone.
Send a comment if it gets our attention, whether it be a super thanks or a super chat or just a really nice comment. We're gonna give you the coffee cheers. I'm gonna see if I can come up with a better name. So next week I'll have a good name, but for right now, Kathy Flanders, you got the first coffee cheers.
Thank you.
So keep the comments coming. And make sure to purchase Rich's book, Cold Case Closed. It outlines the Lizzie Borden murders. The Borden family murders, because Rich believes Lizzie was innocent. So if you find out a little bit more about that particular case, make sure to check out Cold Case Closed. That will be linked in the description and in the pinned comment. And be sure to follow all of Eric Eulis's stuff. Again, Eric, if you're watching, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was really exciting. I had like a whole Eric Eulis week listening to all these different podcasts, prepping for this whole DB Cooper thing. So this has been a great episode.
So it's been fun. Thank you very much, Seth.
Thank you, guys.
Caroline, thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys. Have a good one. Awesome. Let me live stream real quick.